Hey everybody, this is Jennifer, and I'm sorry I haven't posted in a few days. I've been kind of under the weather with a migraine. But today I was feeling a little bit better, so I wanted to post how to make this necklace. And I used amethyst and rose quartz in this. And I will list in the description below all the materials that I used, so you know exactly what to use. And also in the description box, I will list all the tools that I use and love and that I've tried out, so you can go there if you are in need of any sort of tools. If you don't mind, please hit this thumbs up button. That really helps me out a lot. It lets me know that you're enjoying my content, and it also lets YouTube know to recommend my content to other people wanting to learn to make jewelry. And so if you don't mind, do that. And then also hit the subscribe button. I'm really working hard on getting monetized so I can bring more content to you. And also hit the bell notification button so you can know whenever I upload a new video. If you have any questions or comments, I would love to hear from you. Just put those down in the comments section, and I will do my best to reply to you. And I hope you have a wonderful day and enjoy the tutorial. Bye. To make this necklace, I've already started out by picking out my beads. I'm doing rose quartz and amethyst, and I've picked out four 4mm beads, 4 6mm beads, and 5 8mm beads. And on the 4mm beads, the holes weren't large enough, so I had to use a bead reamer and open it. And I started out with my manual one like this, and this comes in a file set, and this is listed down in the description below. But I had to get out my electric bead reamer, and it has attachments that go on it, and like you just slip them out. And then this is my wire rounder that I use all the time. But I was able to get the holes of the beads large enough to go over the 18 gauge wire. So if you ever have that problem, that's a way to solve it. But I straightened out a piece of 18 gauge wire, and I'm using 18 gauge silver from Parawire. And I've straightened out and cut about 10 inches of that, which is more than we'll need, but I want to have enough room for wrapped loops at the ends of them. And then I'm also using 26 gauge Parawire in silver, and I've cut off 4 pieces of that are about 24 inches long, because I want to have 12 inches on each side. So that will be more than enough, but I want to have enough so I don't have to worry about running out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get my 6-step bell making pliers, and I'm also going to get my needle nose pliers. So I'm going to come a couple inches in, and I'm just going to make a bend in my wire like that. And then I'm going to take my 6-step bell making pliers, and I'm going to go on the smallest loop, and I'm just going to start wrapping this around. And I'm going to wrap it as tight as I can get it. And then after I get it wrapped like that, I'm going to pull it around a little further with my needle nose pliers, and then I'm just going to make a wrapped loop. And I think I want to make about 3 wraps, just because I like the way that looks. Okay, so that's the 3rd wrap. And so I'm going to come up around here, and these wraps aren't real close to each other, especially on the back. So I'm just going to take my pliers, and I'm just going to pinch them together to make them nice and close, so they're nice and neat. And I'm just going to kind of straighten all this up. Now I'm going to take my cutters, and I'm going to trim this off, and I'm going to leave just a tiny bit of length on there. And this is an optional thing to do. You can just press the wire down, but what I like to do to finish off a piece so I know that it's not going to scratch anybody, I like to use my electric wire rounder, because I know that won't it won't scratch anybody if it's nice and round. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I'm periodically going to check and just check for any sharpness and to see how smooth it is. And it's almost smooth enough. So I'm just going to round it just a little bit more. And that feels smooth. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to press that down. And I'm just going to pinch those wraps up nice and close. And I'm just going to feel it, make sure everything feels smooth. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to take our 4 pieces of 24-inch long 26 gauge wire. And we want to go ahead and get them all to where they're even with each other. Like that. I want to figure out which piece is going to be the front and which piece is going to be the back. And this part with the wire rounded end, I want this to be my front. So I'm going to go ahead and get the wire to where it's even on either side. And then once I do that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap these around. I'm just going to go ahead and put it on here, and I'm going to wrap it just like this. Now I want to turn it so I have my front side out. I'm just going to run this wires through my hands just a little bit, just to kind of warm them up, so they'll be a little bit more pliable to work with. But this is what you're working with so far. This is going to be your front, and this is going to be your back. So I'm going to straighten this wire out a little bit better. Start with a 4mm amethyst bead. And I've already tested these out on just a little scrap piece of 18 gauge wire to make sure the beads holes were big enough after I used the bead reamer. So I'm just going to slide that all the way down like that. And then you're going to choose one side, whichever side you want to start with, and you're just going to straighten out these wires again. And you want to make sure they're laying flat against your bead. And if it slides up and down, it's okay. You can slide it back down. But you want to make sure these pieces of wire lie flat against your bead like this. And you're going to take it around, and you're going to pull it back around like that. Back to the side you started with. And I want to make sure that my wire is on the right side, because the more beads you add, the more it locks it into place. And then I'm going to take this side, and I'm going to do the same thing. I want to make sure these are laying very flat and not overlapping each other. And I'm just going to pull it around back to the same side, and each piece is going to be brought back to the same side it came from. So that's what the first wrap is going to look like. So now I'm going to take one of my 4mm rose quartz beads, and I'm just going to slide that on. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to make sure these wires are laying flat And I find it helpful to kind of pull the wires with your fingers and just straighten them out each time. And then I'm just going to wrap it back around like that. And then I'm going to pull this side around. And I'm just going to go back around like that. And if you need to, you can open up your beads a little bit to make them show better. You can just take your nails and just kind of press it open like that and just pull it open. And that will help you with that. And then I'm going to take one of my amethyst 6mm beads. And of course you can do this in all one tone, but I wanted to do it in 2 tones. So I'm just going to slide that down. And I just want to make sure my front stays my front this whole time. And I'm just going to fold it around, and it helps to kind of press your thumb against that wire when you're pulling it around to help it to lay flat. So I'm just going to press it around and pull it around. And now I'm going to add my 6mm rose quartz bead. But I'm just going to press that down into it so it's laying flat against it. And I'm going to just take these wires and I'm just going to pull it around like this. And I'm going to do the same thing with the other side. And I'm just trying to make sure everything is laying the correct way this whole time. And now I'm going to take an 8mm amethyst bead. And I'm just going to slide that on. And I'm going to press that against there with my thumb. And I'm just going to pull it around nice and tight. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. And I'm just going to pull it around. So this is what we're doing so far. This is what we've got. This is what it looks like. And I just want to make sure it slid down all the way to the end. So now I'm going to take a rose quartz 8mm bead. And I'm just going to slide that on. And I'm going to just pull this around. I'm going to lay my thumb on it so it stays nice and flat. And pull it straight around. And now I'm going to do the same thing with the other side. And I'm just going to pull that around. Now I'm going to take an 8mm amethyst bead. And I'm just going to do the exact same thing. I'm just going to pull that around, hold it with my thumb, and pull that back around like that. And I want to make sure this is laying as flat and close as I can get it to the bead. So I'm going to do that with the same other side, the same way. Now I'm going to put an 8mm rose quartz on. And I'm just going to straighten these wires out in my fingers. So I'm just pulling that back around, and now I'm going to do the same thing with this other side. And now I'm going to do an 8mm amethyst. And if somebody wanted like chunkier jewelry, you can always add some 10mm beads in here if somebody likes a bigger piece of jewelry. I have done that for people before. But this one I wanted it to be a little bit more delicate. Okay, and since I started on this side, if you're using two tones, if you're using one type of bead, you don't have to worry about this, but if you're using two tones of beads like I am, then you want to have a mirror image of what you have going on over here. So now I'm going to start with a rose quartz 6mm bead, and I'm going to slide this on. And I'm just going to hold the wire on that bead as I pull it around. And then I'm going to do the same thing with this side. And I'm going to take a 6mm amethyst bead. And I'm going to start, and you always want to start with the side you started with at the very beginning. That's the side you're going to start with for the entire piece. So I'm just going to pull that around like that. And I want to make sure that's pressed down against the bead. And now I'm going to take a rose quartz 4mm. And I'm just going to pull this around. I'm going to hold it with my thumb. And I'm just straightening the wire as I go. And I want to make sure that's pulled down against the bead as far as it'll go. Now I'm going to straighten this back out. One thing about copper wire is it does warm up in your hands, and that does make it a little bit more pliable. So I'm just going to pull that. And now I'm going to put my last bead on, and it's going to be my 4mm amethyst. And I'm just going to slide that down. And I'm just holding it in place with my thumb, and I'm pulling it around. Now right here, we're going to have to end the wire. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this around a little bit and back around over here. And then I'm going to trim the wires as close as I can get it. And then I have these little wires kind of sticking up right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to gently start pressing this around, and I'm kind of opening and closing my pliers as I do this. And I just want to make sure I keep everything as close together as I can. And I just want to make sure it's pressed down until it's smooth. And down here, before I finish this off, I want to make sure everything is sitting where I want it to sit. And I'm just going to make sure all these beads are straight on here. And of course we can straighten them up a little bit more but it's afterwards, but it's easier to straighten them up now. Okay, so now I'm going to take these wires, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to bend them around my wire like that, just to give them some shape. And then I'm going to take the wire that's on the bottom, and I'm going to pull it around about 1.5 times, and then I'm going to trim that wire right there. And then I'm going to go ahead and press that wire down, and just want to make sure everything stays nice and smooth. So you just want to keep everything smooth and everything nice and neat. So I'm going to take this wire, and I'm just laying it right on top, and I'm pulling it around. I pulled it around about 1.5 times, and I'm just going to trim it. And I have this on the front. So I just want to press that down, and that wire is kind of sticking out. So I'm just going to gently work it around. And I'm going to feel it, and it feels smooth. I'm going to take the wire that's going to lay on the top of this last wire. I'm going to lay it next. And I just want to make sure I have the correct wire. And I'm just going to hold it in place with my thumb. And I'm just going to pull it around. So 1 time, and then I'm just going to pull it around like that. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and press that wire down. And any wire that you see sticking up, you want to go ahead and press it down. And then I'm going to feel it. And I'm just going to pull these wires together a little bit more with my thumbnail. And then I'm going to take this piece of wire right here, and I'm going to hold it. And I'm going to wrap it around. Wrap it around like 1 more time. I'm just going to trim it. And I'm just going to gently press that down. And I'm going to feel with my finger, make sure I don't feel anything sharp anywhere. And so this is what the front piece looks like so far. And we're going to end up bending it into a curve, but I'm not going to do that yet. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go right above here and give myself enough room for about 3 wraps. And I'm just going to bend it. And I'm going to take my 6-step pliers on the smallest one. And I'm just going to wrap this around. So I'm pulling it with my pliers pretty hard. And now I'm going to wrap it. So there's 1 wrap, 2, 3, and then this one, it's not going to be a full wrap. It's just going to come, and I'm going to trim it. So now this little piece that's sticking up right here, I'm going to take my wire rounder. So now I'm going to just press that wire down so it matches the other end. So I'm just going to press that, and I'm going to press these wraps close together. I'll make sure that's pressed down really well so it's flat. Now I'm just going to kind of straighten everything out and make sure everything feels good. So this is what the main part of our necklace is looking like so far. And I'm just going to take these ends, and I'm going to make sure they're twisted flat like that. Now to make the chain to go along with this, I'm going to use 20 gauge wire. You could also use 18 gauge, but I like the way 20 gauge looks. So I'm going to start out by straightening the length of wire. So I've straightened a long length of wire. And now I'm going to take my ruler, and I'm going to measure off 1-inch sections of the wire, and then I'll show you what to do with it next. So I'm just going to measure off a 1-inch section like that. And that's going to be our little template for the rest of the pieces. So I'm just going to use that piece and I'm going to even it up right here. And I'm just going to put my cutters right against that end. And I'm just going to cut it so we have the same length. And if it ends up being a little bit too long, you can always just trim it. So I'm going to keep that same piece and I'm going to keep doing that. And I'm going to cut quite a few of these. And I do want to make sure both ends are cut flat. If you cut with this side of your cutters, then your ends will be flat. If you cut with this side, it's going to be kind of sharp. So I'm just going to take another piece. And so what I'm doing is I'll show you. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to trim off another piece. Make sure it looks to be the same length, and if it doesn't, you're just going to trim that little bit off. So it's exactly the same length. And this will give you the same length of links on your chain. And then also trim off, just take the bare end of it and just trim off the little tiny sharp piece, because we don't want anything to be sharp. But I'm going to cut about 24 or 26 of these. And like this one is sharp, so I'm just going to take that, barely take that little end right there and just trim that. So now I've cut 28 lengths of wire, and I have this one extra one that I'm going to use as a template if I need more wire. I'm hoping I don't. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my round nose pliers, and this is actually really easy, and you could make a little mark with a marker on here if you need to, or you can just eyeball it, which is what I do. But I'm just going to take it about in the same place on each side, and I'm just going to turn it until it touches the wire like that. And then I'm going to do that same thing on the other end. And I'm going to try to place it about the same way. And I'm going to turn this one the opposite way that I did the other one. So you end up with kind of like an S shape. Like that. So that's what you want to end up with for the links. And I'll show you how to do one more of those. So I'm just going to take it about in the same place that I did the other one. I'm just going to grab it at the end. I'm just going to twist it around. And I'm just going to keep twisting it. And you may have to move your pliers around a little bit. And then I'm just going to take this side. You're just going to twist this one the opposite way that you did the other one. And then that's how you get that. And then what I'm going to do after that is I'm going to take, and I'm just going to take my nylon jaw pliers, and I'm just going to press it so it's even. And just kind of press it all around. And that'll actually give it a little bit of extra strength. You could also hammer these out a little bit if you wanted to on a bench block, which I have done before. And that does make them a lot harder, and it gives it a very different look. I can show you one. This is what, if you hammer them out, this is what it looks like. They're just a little flatter. They're definitely a lot harder. You can barely even bend them. But that's what this looks like when you hammer them out. But I don't want to do that with this piece. I just want them to be the rounded loops. So I'm going to finish doing that, and I will be back. So I'm just going to take my pliers, and I'm just going to open this loop up a little bit, just enough to slip it on here. And I'm just going to slip this loop on. like that, and then I'm going to close it. And to close it, I'm just going to pinch it closed flat like this, and then I'm going to press it together. And I just want to make sure it's nice and pressed together and nice and tightly on there. So that's what I'm going to be doing. So this link is going like this. The next link I'm going to do the opposite way. So this link, I want to go, instead of being in the S shape, I want it to be a backwards S shape. So I'm going to open up this end. And then I'm just going to, grab that end. I'm just going to twist it open just a little bit. And I'm going to hook it on here in the opposite direction that I hooked the last one on. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to press it flat like that. And then since there's a gap there, I want to take that gap and I just want to press it closed with my pliers gently until it's nice and firmly closed, just like that. And then I'm going to do a few on this side, and then I'm going to start on the other side. And I'm just going to keep doing that on either side, periodically measuring it till I get to almost to the length that I want, because I want to leave a room for a wrapped loop for the clasp and then for the hook. So I've added my links. I'm actually right now with this part straight, I'm at about 17 inches. So what I'm going to go ahead and do now is I'm going to go ahead and just gently put a curve into this bar with the beads, and I just want to make sure everything stays laying flat and forward as I gently twist it up. And now I'm going to measure it with the bend in it. And it's also good if you have someone you can try this on and measure it on. That also is very helpful. So this is about 16 inches with the bend on it. So I'm going to go try it on somebody and I'll be right back. So I tried this on somebody just to see where it was lengthwise, and I want it to go a little bit longer than this. I have 12 links on each side. So I'm just going to go ahead and add the rest of my links, which is 2 for each side. And now I'm going to take some of my 18 gauge wire because I want the hook and everything to be really strong. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a nice length of wire, of 18 gauge wire. I'm just going to straighten it out. I'm going to cut it, and it doesn't have to be super long, but you want to have enough to work with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a wrapped loop on each end. And so what I'm going to do to start to do that is I'm going to take my wire and I'm going to bend it like that. And I'm going to take this on the smallest loop right there, because this part's going to actually hook to the necklace. And then I'm just going to hold that there like that, and then I'm just going to pull this around. So I'm just going to pull this around like that and wrap it a few times. And I'm going to use all of this wire. So I'm going to press my links, my wraps closed. I'm just going to press them up together on the front and on the back. And then I'm going to take my wire rounder and I'm going to go on this thing because I don't want it to scratch anybody's neck. And that feels smooth. So I'm going to put this back on here just to hold it in place. And I'm just going to take this little piece of wire that's left, and I'm just going to wrap it around and press it around. So I'm just going to do that, and then I'm just going to press it around until it's laying flat and smooth. I'm just going to feel it and make sure there's no rough edges. And then I'm going to go ahead and straighten this wire out again. And now I'm going to do a wrapped loop on the other side. So I'm going to go just a little ways from that wrapped loop right there, like that. And I'm just going to fold this. And now I'm going to use my 6-step pliers, and I'm going to use the second smallest one because I want to have room to put my hook through. And that should give me room. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull this around. And because this has 3 wraps, I want to do 3 wraps on this side. Pinch these little wraps up. I'm just going to close those little wraps up together. And then I'm going to take this little wire end right here, and I'm just going to trim it. And then I'm going to use my wire rounder on this end. And it looks smooth and it feels smooth. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to press this down. And that feels good. And so I'm going to put this on the left side of my necklace. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this little loop up right here. And I'm going to put this wrapped loop on the end right there. I'll make sure it's closed really well. And then I'm going to take some more 18 gauge wire. I'm going to take it and straighten it. And I'm going to cut a nice length of that, more than what I need. And I'm going to take my round nose pliers, and I'm just going to do a twist like that and just close it up like that. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my 6-step bell making pliers, and I'm going to go on this 3rd step. And I'm going to go up just a little ways from my loop. And I'm going to leave just a little bit of room. And I'm going to have this loop facing up like this. And then I'm going to clip, and then I'm going to bend it around like that. So this is what I have so far. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this piece right here and just trim it. And I'm going to use my wire rounder on this, because this part I'm going to bend up. Then we use my wire rounder on it first so it's smooth. And that feels good. So now I'm going to take the end of this in my pliers just like this. And I'm going to bend it up. And then I want to make sure I can close it. And I'm just going to kind of gently press it so it somewhat flattens out, but not all the way. And I'm going to put just a tiniest little bend in that. And I'm going to make sure this closes pretty much all the way like that. And now I'm just going to take my nylon jaw pliers and I'm just going to press this all out to make sure it's all nice and flat. And I do want to make sure that this hook is going to fit through here before I attach it, and it does fit well. So now I'm going to attach it to this end over here. So I'm just going to open up this piece right here. And I'm going to slip this on like that. And I'm going to close it. And just want to make sure everything is press closed. And then I'm just going to make sure it all hooks together right. And then this is your finished necklace. And this is what the clasp and everything looks like. So you just want to press that together and that'll help hold it on. So this necklace actually ended up being more than 16 inches, but I always aim to start with 16 inches and then I like to try it on somebody just to get a feel for where it's going to lie on someone else. So I recommend doing that. But if you enjoyed this video, please hit a thumbs up. That really helps my channel out a lot, and it lets YouTube to know to show my content to other people. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell notification button so you know whenever I upload a video. And all the materials that I use will be in the description below. All the tools that I like to use in general will also be in the description so you can know what I like to use in there. Everything I have in there I have tried out and used, and they're tools that I really do like. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video and I will see you in my next one. Bye.